All right. What's up, you lazy, entitled, basement dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids? Today, we have a great guest returning to the show, Andrew Mercado. If you've been a fan or a friend of the show for a long time, you saw him a year ago when we weren't committing treason and throwing our allies under the bus entirely. And he was telling us about what was going on with the war in or not Afghanistan, not Iraq, Ukraine. You know, one of those conflicts across the ocean there. And he's a would you call yourself a video journalist, indie journalist? I suppose.
Indie journalist, streamer, someone trying to
Mm-hmm.
put the news out there.
And he does a lot of stuff, but he's been on the ground in Ukraine quite a few times and has some unique and interesting perspectives to share. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you do your own introduction for everybody, kind of let them know who you are and how you ended up going and covering Ukraine and all that.
Hi, I'm Andrew Mercado from Mercado Media, station here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Started covering Ukraine in 2022, the night that the invasion began. I was streaming Madden football. Okay, I love Madden. I'm a diehard Vikings fan. So, that's
Skull, baby.
unfortunately the only way I can play with the Vikings is on Madden. So I'm playing Madden, and my chat came in, started flooding me with, "Hey, Russia's invading Ukraine. They're invading." I'm like, "What is that? I don't even know what's happening." So I ended my Madden stream, pulled up all the information I could for Russia's invasion of Ukraine right then and there, and we started covering it. And I started just going through breaking news and stories, and information was coming in. This is before Elon owned Twitter, so there was like relevant information on there that could be found pretty quickly. And after that, we started fundraising for Ukraine because, let's just be honest, like, how content works, we're making money, right? So I'm like, hey, I'm not, yeah, there's a war happening. People are literally taking missiles to the face. I don't feel comfortable, like, making ad revenue off of talking about this without giving back on something. So we started fundraising for YouTube Give fundraisers. And then I'm like, well, YouTube probably takes a cut of this, or like the CEO of something takes a cut from this money, and not all of it is going to Ukraine. Like, it's still a good
Mm-hmm.
source to donate to nonprofits on YouTube, but it's still like, I want to make sure the money is getting to Ukrainian hands in Ukraine. So then we started fundraising for NAFO, 69th Sniffing Brigade, which is its name, and they specialize in truck donations, drones, medical supplies, etc. So we started a fundraiser with them, got Ukraine a truck, and then they were like, "Do you want to come on the next convoy to Ukraine?" I was like, "What?" And I'm like, I served in the army and I did convoys in the army, so it was nothing, nothing new to me. But to think like I'm just in Minnesota here, and I'm just covering the war, from home because it's fucked up. Sorry, Kev, I can swear on your stream. It's okay.
Yeah,
It's
you can
messed.
definitely swear on
Okay,
here.
okay. It's messed
Also, can
up.
you turn your mic up a little bit, maybe, or get a little closer? Somebody on the
Yeah.
on the
Is
live
that
was saying they
yeah?
can't hear you.
Is that
Yeah,
is
it's
that
way
better?
better. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so we got a truck, done, and then they were like, "Come on the next one." So I flew to Estonia. We fundraised another truck. We're now at 13 trucks. So the second truck was the one that I went and delivered from Estonia to Ukraine, and I've done that 5 times now. I've done 5 convoys to Ukraine, but then I do, once we get the truck there and give it to the soldiers and all the handoff of the aid, then I go to the front lines or to wherever and do journalism. So I stay like extra. I stay like a month at a time or whatever, and just talk to people and see what's happening.
Well, it's been incredible, and it's really cool. Being able to kind of have that behind the scenes information and just actually being able to see what's happening without the lens of Fox News or CNN or whatever politician is telling you what. It's really nice, and kind of one of the awesome things about the age of the internet and social media is that we can get that kind of information delivered to us, but having the people willing to go put out there, because it's not exactly safe what you're doing, right? When you go over there, I mean, you're putting yourself more or less in harm's way for a Facebook stream or a YouTube stream, and that's it's pretty admirable, and we really appreciate the fact that you're willing to take your time, your money, your energy, and go over there and do that.
Of course.
Um, so I guess just jumping right into it, the war so far, from our perspective, Russia has clearly been testing the waters with imperialism for a while, right? Like they invaded.
Yes. Oh. I think Jordan glitched out.
A little bit.
Oh, dang it.
14.
There you go.
What's that?
You glitched out a second. You said Russia's starting imperialism, and then you literally like froze.
Oh, right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I had a little internet glitch there.
Okay.
So in 2008 they invaded Georgia, right? And then in 2014 they annexed Crimea, and then I feel like because the West and NATO didn't really put the brakes on them, probably when they should have back then, they invaded Ukraine, really testing NATO's resolve to defend its allies, to test the United States standing behind NATO, and it's been really surprising because Ukraine has really stood up to it's a very David and Goliath story, right? They've been able to stand up to what is definitely not a peer army. I mean, they are in theory should have been a far superior military in almost every way, shape, and form. So how have they been able to hold out for so long, and what have they done to keep this, to keep the Russians from completely overrunning them?
Resiliency. It's atomic, right? Like your existence. It's not like a war of narratives, because oftentimes, like in current events, we are like, well, that's someone's opinion versus my opinion, and we're in the marketplace of ideas, and everything's a debate. Well, Ukrainian lives are not a debate. It's like Russian missiles are coming in, they're killing people, they're dying, and Russians are trying to take Ukrainian land. Like still, and it's not about like, well, I feel this, and it's existence. It's Ukrainian existence. It's their identity. It's their history. It's their culture. It's their religion. Everything is Russians are trying to wipe that away, and they always have. And to go back further, it was Georgia. It was in 2008, but also Chechnya twice back in the 90s. So it's like been 30 plus years of Russian invasions of countries after the Soviet Union collapsed. And they continue to do so. Destabilization efforts here in the United States. We got Russians funneling money to media in the United States. Tenant media got millions of dollars to disseminate false information to MAGA, Trump supporting viewers. I'm sure they influence areas in the other side of the political aisle, but they're not in charge of our government. We see the MAGA and Donald Trump control our government.
Not to mention their like cyber warfare, and they're just like immediate disinformation campaigns.
Yeah, so it's a big battle. I mean, Ukrainians live right next to Russia, so they know Russian history. Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union. They know how Russian information operations work. They know how the Russians are. So it's like they're really like they're prepared for what the Russians have. They fought the Russians off in 2022 without major support yet. This is before like the major influx of weapons and flow started coming. Russians tried to take Kyiv in 3 days and failed miserably. They've actually lost every strategic objective to this point in 3 years. They haven't completed a single strategic objective whatsoever. The Russian economy is absolutely collapsing, and it's unfortunate that Donald Trump seems to be giving a life preserver to Putin and Russia right now.
Well, and this is an interesting point to make because a lot of people say that Ukraine can't hold out forever, like they can't do this forever, but in a lot of ways it seems like they could. Nobody thought that they could do it this long, and they have effectively repelled Russia again, as he said, from achieving any of their strategic goals or objectives. And so, like, you've been there. How do you realistically think that they could continue to do this with the right support for another 3 years, another year? I mean, like, what kind of timeline do you see on it, having been there on the front line?
Well, I don't even know if like putting a timeline on it would be it was even like proper. I know a lot of people like to like, how much money or like how much time. It's like, when you were fighting an imperialist aggressor like Russia, they're banking on it lasting forever. They're the ones that want it to last for as long as they can, because as soon as the war ends, Russia's economy bottoms out because they have put everything into this war. They've transformed everything. They're the people that do bread distribution do missiles now or rockets, or like the mail service is doing artillery. So they have completely, plus they have North Koreans helping them invade Ukraine and attack Ukrainians. So
It
as soon
sounds
as
like they gave up on that a little bit.
yeah.
Well, they tried, and then like they just weren't effective at all, right? Like,
Yeah, they're using them mostly in Kursk region up
okay.
inside of Russia. But yeah, they're just cannon fodder.
All you
It's
need
not
to
like
defeat the
highly
North Koreans is
effective.
a little bit of porn, and they're incapacitated.
Yeah, yeah, they were busy in their beds watching it. They couldn't even go out on mission. But
Yeah,
yeah,
well, I
it's
mean, Pornhub is there's a lot of that
mhm.
data and a lot of videos on there. So,
Yeah.
like, if
The,
it's the first time you get access to it, I don't know.
yeah, who would have thought that they get more freedom being inside of Russian military watching porn? That's how the Russians are keeping them in line. Like, oh, it's some porn. Here
Yeah,
you go.
we'll turn off. We'll change the Wi-Fi code if you
Yeah,
don't get
yeah,
out there.
exactly. So yeah, it's it's putting a timeline on it. It's the people like me. I wanted Ukraine. I wanted victory for Ukraine right away, and like
Oh yeah.
we could have provided Ukraine so much opportunities, and that's why I was critical
Right,
of
and
like
I guess I wasn't asking a timeline on that.
yeah
I guess I
yeah
was asking more like how long do you think Ukraine would be able to keep up this level of resistance before the walls will really start to crack?
Um, I mean, as it's going to sound as long as Ukraine has the resolve to do so, which they absolutely do. It's really on like the will of the people, and that might sound
Hmm.
cringe or whatever, but that's just how it is. It's truly like if the populism of the Ukrainian populace was like, we're done, hey, let's call it, we tried, but that's not what it is. They want to defend their country. They truly want to like do what they can, do what they have to do to stop this Russian invasion from continuing. So it's really just on the Ukrainian people. And right now, there's absolutely zero like will to like just end without security guarantees and
Hmm.
without accountability on Russia. They don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's super weird talking to anybody about this particular topic because both there's so much like disinformation and
Hmm.
misinformation on either side. Like on one side you got Trump and conservatives saying, "Oh, Ukraine has to draft like people and they're like they don't have any more people to pull from the population." And then on the other side, which on your side or whatever, you're saying like, oh, Russia has transformed their economy that is doing really badly, and they are also having to conscript many portions of their population, and both like it seems like both sides are like nobody can continue, but yet it's still continuing. Like it seems like it's going to continue until it just physically can't.
Yeah, and realistically, it's like unfortunately all the narratives from Trump administration is right out of Russia.
Oh yeah,
So
oh yeah,
every all of their narratives are like obviously aligned with Russia. The truth is, Ukraine is doing everything they can to prevent their youth from being conscripted. They've actually like it's a fight every time because they have had to lower it. It started off at like 27 to 30 year olds, like, and then they lowered it to 25 to 27. They have it. It's not at the lower 20s or even teens for like draftees, and it's a battle every time. That's been the give and take between the previous Biden administration and Ukrainian government. Was, hey, you're not conscripting enough. That was Biden was telling them, hey, you're not conscripting enough, and then the Ukrainian military would say, well, you're not providing us enough weapons to go and fight with. Like, give us the weapons, and then we'll go fight. But so it was kind of like a constant just back and forth, and
sure.
it sucks. But and I was always criticizing Biden about that, but the opposite was never going to be a good choice, which is what we have
Right.
now, which is the absolute worst ending, like worst possible choice right now.
Worst case scenario. Well, and
Yeah.
I think that obviously there's been lots of criticism from the right for a long time about any of the support that we've provided to Ukraine, which is just insane to me. Um, but Ukraine has obviously been largely a lot more successful than I think they would have been without the U.S. military equipment and aid that they have gotten. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that?
So you're saying that they'd be successful even without it?
I mean, I would say that has allowed them to be as successful as
Oh
they've
yeah.
been, is
Oh yeah,
having
yeah,
that
yeah.
aid. Like,
Yes, yes, yeah.
um,
Like the HIMARS systems, the artillery
mhm.
systems, all of yeah, everything we've given them has been good. It's always helped.
So, like, obviously, we, especially, you seeing there on the front line, wanted to have more U.S. aid and support going there
Hmm.
under the Biden administration than what we were giving.
Hmm.
But now, I mean, it's really, in my opinion, nothing short of treason that Trump has thrown Ukraine under the bus. It's they're an ally. They are a ally. We're treaty bound to defend.
Hmm.
and then now he's withholding aid that's been approved by Congress, which he in theory doesn't have the authority to do. Like the executive branch does not have the ability to withhold aid that has been approved by Congress or spending that's been approved by Congress. But that would require a Congress that has a spine to do literally anything. But I guess now it's that meeting with Zelensky. Was painful to watch, and I feel like that's going to be a moment that is going to be on history tests in the future, a date that kids are going to have to remember when they answer, like, the shot heard around the world, a day that will live in infamy. I really feel like that is one of those moments where the tectonic plates of the world order have shifted or started shifting. And obviously, right after that, NATO met for the first time without the U.S. present.
Mm-hmm.
NATO threw all of its weight behind Ukraine, saying we support you wholly and completely, which makes a lot of sense too, because after Ukraine, they're the ones who are on the front line if Ukraine's not fighting on the front line anymore.
And that's actually like, just to be good faith completely.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the one MAGA argument that I, in good faith, to get behind, is that Europe needs to step up big time. And like everyone will say that. Everyone that's supportive of Ukraine that isn't supportive of Trump at all, or like doesn't like him, will like by proxy agree, because it is Europe's front door, right? Ukraine's been like the shield of Europe now for 3 years, taking Russian everything. And Europe needs to meet the moment. The U.S., and that's why we have great platforms, and shout out to Afchawag calling out what needs to be called out. But also, while the U.S. is very bad right now, Europe needs to step up and meet this moment. And if they don't, it's going to be catastrophic, I think.
I agree with that, and I think it seems like they are. It seems like all of them are starting to increase spending and whatnot. Do you think that NATO has the ability to fill the U.S. aid gap, a U.S. military assistance gap, to keep them going?
If they significantly step up their production and the output, yes. They like the Europe has really cucked itself to the U.S. in terms of like defense. They have absolutely like powerful weapons, but like, for example, when the UK gave their Storm Shadows and the French gave their I can't think of the French one right now. Chat, help me out. They had to get U.S. support for like GPS targeting. Like they gave Ukraine their weapons to use, but they still had to rely on U.S. GPS tracking and help, and which we just ended that like yesterday, by the way. So it's like Europe, it can't really run autonomously without U.S. military support, and that needs to change. They can, but they're still kind of like cucked to it. The Scout missiles, thank you. They're still kind of like cucked to it a little bit, and that needs to change completely. I'm sitting here ranting like at my European viewers, like, your countries are like so historical and like have done so many things, and it's like, why are you cucked to the U.S.? Like, I get it, but like, come on, like your country is cool, like. So you have a powerful country.
I did a little bit as we were talking. I was like, how much aid has Europe as a whole committed? And it's actually, according to U.S. News, it is actually a lot closer than you would think. Apparently, U.S. has committed around 128 billion, and the European Union as a whole is like 124 billion. So like. Yeah. Obviously, that includes Germany, France, UK, Italy, like
all the countries,
the EU for sure. Yeah. But I mean, I think you count the EU as a whole, and so clearly it's not as right. Like, we don't hold it. They haven't held it over their heads quite as much. Like, it doesn't seem like they're like say, "Oh, we're doing this such great thing," and it's not as big of a. That's not like the story as it is for the U.S., where we're saving the world, and they're just like, "Yeah, we're doing the right thing for somebody that's our neighbor."
Right. And that's why like the information space is so tough. And but what Jordan brought up earlier, it's like the arguments being made, you could be painted as one thing or another, but it's like, is Trump telling the truth that Europe has done nothing? That no, Europe has done so much. They've given a lot. They've given a fuckload. Could Europe do more? Yes. Could Biden have done more? Yes. Like everything, like I to the point where I personally got involved with going to Congress with the Ukraine Action Summit. I had to wear a suit, I like wearing sweatpants, you guys. I like
Right.
wearing like hoodies and like being like comfortable. Like that's how I like being. I don't like being in something where I can't breathe and it's like choking my like it hurts. You know, just to talk. But I did that to find out, you know, how does this process work? You know, how are these people up in Washington D.C. vote on bills and get this thing passed? And unfortunately, the entire time it was the Republican Party, like the Democratic Party. They had issues with Israel being attached into the aid, which obviously, and then, in my opinion, but then also, you know, the Republicans were like, border aid. We want border aid in there too. So it was like, we couldn't just pass the Ukraine aid by itself. The Republicans
Yeah.
wanted Israel and they wanted
Well, but
border aid in there.
they stuck the TikTok bill onto the Ukrainian and Israeli
Yeah.
aid.
Yeah, they did that too.
The TikTok ban was like attached to that, and
Yeah.
this is why bills need to be standalone. We really the omnibus bills do become a problem when they're abused
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, I can get like a foreign policy bill, like foreign
Mhm.
policy aid bill. Like that
Yeah.
makes sense to combine Israel and Palestine and then just other foreign aid type of things along
Yep.
with Ukraine aid. But like throwing things like a TikTok bill or, you know, in there is just the bald-faced reason why, you know, nothing is happening in Congress. Not like the actual reason, which is corporate
Mhm.
donations and
Mhm.
you know corporate capture, but like that's something everybody can see and should point to and should slap the hand of whichever side tries to do something like that.
And that's what was happening. Exactly, that was just adding shit to it. And actually, you know, I've kind of came back a little bit. I do like single issue bills if possible, but geopolitical issues or like foreign policy, they are likely going to be put together because, you know, we're never like, I mean, it's hard to like focus on just one specific thing only with US policy because of how much influence and things we have going on at all times. But that's why it happened. That's why they put border aid in there to try to delay it, or the TikTok bill to try. Republicans are doing everything they could to delay aid to Ukraine. That's why Speaker McCarthy lost his job. That's why we have Mike Johnson, right? Is because Ukraine aid was getting through. And this has been happening since the end of 2022. A lot of the Ukraine influencers and people are conservative. And it took me a while to realize this because I'm like, I was speaking about Trump and how bad he was in 2022. And a lot of like the people in the space were like, you're being divisive. You're pushing Ukraine supporters away. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not. I'm just trying to tell you Trump is going to absolutely abandon Ukraine. And I was telling him this 3 years ago. I was telling, because it was there, like they were saying it, they were showing it, they were delaying it. So it's unfortunate that, you know, the existence we have now at the U.S. government and the state level for Ukraine, you know, it shouldn't be surprising completely. It's just obviously emotionally shitty to see it like play out now.
Right. And so, and to clarify for anybody who does care about the specific numbers on where that money is and like how it got contributed to Ukraine's effort, is like 70 billion was weapons and equipment and other military support, and then like 50-ish billion was actually like financial budgetary support
Yeah.
to support the Ukrainian like, you know, government in order
And
to keep running.
And so you're also, for all the viewers or the listeners and the viewers too, that the money for the weapons is not cash. It's
Right.
not like the U.S. is giving a suitcase of cash to Ukraine, and like though those weapon systems have monetary value, right? Often in the millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they add up over time. Like when I served in the Army, I was personally responsible for $18.5 million worth of equipment. Did I have a suitcase of $18 million in the Army walking around like, here's my money? No, that's not how it works. So a lot of that is just representative of the weapon system and not like how Marjorie Taylor Greene would say, they're giving cash, giving laundry money. The space
Like at the
lasers
strip
made it.
club, you know, making it rain on
literally.
Ukraine. Yeah,
Literally.
And I think that's point. And I have a whole section to this, but since we're talking about it, and somebody in the chat said it as well. It's old equipment. A lot of this is equipment that we were phasing out, going to decommission, warehoused equipment that we weren't using anyway.
Yeah, old stuff.
And it's really important to also note that like this is a really cheap investment for what the United States personally gets back on it. Not only in the fact that as we phase out that equipment and build new equipment, that's obviously creating jobs, stimulating the U.S. economy. Like when we talk about that money getting spent, that's getting spent here in the United States, right? We're getting rid of a lot of equipment that we were going to get rid of soonish anyway, and that's being spent here. But also the amount of information we have gleaned, because we built every piece of American military hardware damn near was built to fight the Russians, right? Like that was the premise throughout the entire Cold War, and everything. The foundational purpose was to be able to go toe to toe with the Russians or the USSR at the time. And thankfully, we've never gotten to see how well our equipment would work against them because we've never went to war with the Soviet Union or the Russians, which would be bad. Like everybody should want to avoid
Technically,
that
we did
particular.
go to war with Soviet Union in the 19 like teens when we invaded Russia after they became the Soviet Union uh, for a little while, right after World War
Oh
One.
yeah,
But
fair enough. Fair
I know
enough.
what you're saying. I'm sorry. That was just me.
um, not since they've become a nuclear power,
Right.
and not Cold War era. We never went to war with
Right.
them, and that's
Right.
that's a good thing. Uh, but this has so we've built all of our equipment to our best knowledge of what they have and how well it performs. But that's just a lot of it comes down to our best guesses. And I remember, like, just to show you how much some of this could get thrown off is like uh back in the 80s, I think it was, some of our missile tracking systems for Russian aircraft was having trouble tracking them because our stuff was too precise and their fuel and signatures were not precise enough. And so we couldn't get perfect locks because it wasn't consistent enough. And like we were expecting them to have a almost better weapons platform than they had, but we didn't know how well that would perform, and we started seeing that because Russia sells some of their equipment to other countries. So we fought some of their equipment here and there, but now this is the very first time that we actually get to see Russian equipment being operated by Russians, the best and the newest stuff that they possibly have being operated by Russians using Russian tactics in an actual land war against another uniformed military, and how well our old equipment fares against that, and where we're doing really well, where we can improve. And like a few $1 billion in old equipment, that is cheap intel to get that, where we don't have a single American boot on the ground, we're not spilling a drop of American blood, and we get to learn how well our equipment would fight against what is our biggest adversary, right?
Exactly. And we also have there's schools in NATO, like in Romania, Ukrainians have made in joint with NATO forces and NATO leaders to teach how to fight drone warfare. Right, because while drones have existed, Americans, we had big drones, right? The Reaper drone and the other one that can take out entire villages. But the new thing is the small FPV drones, or like the recon drones that is being used at mass, like at big scale, and only Ukraine knows how to fight against that on a strategic level, right? The U.S. is trying. We have a school now, drone school, but like the real information you get is from the front lines and from like when it's happening and how to react to all that. So we've had some really good cooperation with Ukraine on intelligence and in information gathering, learning how the Russians are fighting. But yes, we have the weapon systems that we've given are from our old stocks, right? Like some National Guard unit has old Humvees or something, and it's all around the U.S. They gather them and then they send them to Ukraine. And yes, they're old hand-me-downs, but Ukraine has been using these to destroy Russian equipment and scale this whole time in 3 years, right? You got a Bradley out there taking on a T-90, which is one of Russia's best, main battle tanks. Their biggest and best one, and you got a Bradley out there destroying it, one-on-one. So our equipment's been very significant, albeit older. But again, it has provided like only 90% of the aid provided to Ukraine has came back into the U.S. for production. It's like 87 to 90%. And that also goes back to what Zelensky was talking about when he said, well, all the aid provided to Ukraine isn't actually coming here. What he's saying is it's already going back into the U.S. for reinvesting in newer equipment, replacing old weapons that are going into these National Guard units or big army units or Marine units or wherever to backfill our stocks. It's always been like a reciprocal exchange of like, hey, we're going to help Ukraine. We're clearly getting more out of it. Like 90% of the money approved is literally coming back. So Ukraine's only getting like 10% of the money, but it was still enough to keep them in the fight, right? It was still enough. But that's why someone like me in a good faith was trying to advocate for more aid, like Biden, like let's get more to Ukraine. This isn't good enough. But it sucks that the other argument is literally like, let's just give it to Russia. Let's give Ukraine to Russia. We're supportive of Putin now. Like, that's the only existence I have to work with, was Biden not being enough, or being mid, or restricting Ukraine on long range weapons. Those long range weapons should have never been restricted. Ukraine should have never been restricted to strike across the border ever. That's a bad policy. Red line policy, bad. Not delaying the Abrams to Ukraine, bad. Delaying the Bradley, delaying the F-16s, bad, bad, bad. All terrible decisions. Right. And we're vocal about that. That's why I went to Congress, to try to be like, hey guys, it's got to be more. Ukraine's capable of using these weapons. Ukraine is capable of destroying what they need to destroy. We got to get them there. But it sucks that could never be the argument. We're here talking, like with MAGA or with Trump supporters, we're talking about, well, who even started the invasion? Who's responsible for it? I don't even know. Maybe it was Zelensky. Like, I can't even exist in like an educated environment about Ukraine, but only with like a specific amount of people that actually want Ukraine to win and not to screw around. Getting triggered,
which is just frustrating dealing with MAGA. And this is the difference, I think, between existing in the right sphere and the left sphere. And you get it all the time. Well, I swear your favorite pastime is just trolling people on the internet. So, like, I see it all the time, and you put shit out there just to get it back. But, you hear it all the time, where you're called sheep and cucks and blind and open your eyes and wake up. But they don't want us to be woke, but they want us to wake up, And
stop being woke. Wake up. Like, what?
Pick one or the other, man. I'm getting whiplash here.
Yeah.
But, like, the thing is that, and we've seen it here because, Trump has no consistency whatsoever, aside from just being a fascist douchebag. Like, he says one thing, and then when that doesn't happen, he changes tactic and says something different. And we've seen this where MAGA will follow that thread. Like, he won on eggs and gas prices, right? And now he's like, well, it's going to get more expensive, but we can handle it. And it's like, and they're like, yeah, these other countries have been screwing us. Yeah. We need to tariff them, and like all this kind of shit. And no matter what it is or how ridiculous it is, and this is the case with Ukraine, is like, his rhetoric on Ukraine is absolutely fucking insane. It is completely ridiculous. If you went back 20 years and asked any hardline, conservative what they thought about, if this was a situation, if Russia was to invade Ukraine, what would we do? They'd be like, fucking nuke them. Like, that would have been their answer, right? And the fact that they can follow that is just the stark difference between this conversation we just had, where Biden didn't do enough. Biden was not doing what we wanted him to do. Congress at the time, Democrat-controlled Congress, did not do what we wanted them to do in regards to this. They did a better job than what is currently happening, but it's that ability to criticize where on the right, it's just, this is our new talking point, these are our new marching orders, and this is what we have to do, and you're a sheep if you disagree with me.
Or you have TDS. Or you have TDS.
Oh, yeah.
You can't even criticize Trump. And I tell your viewers, right? I think I told this to you guys, but I came back from that. Like, I supported him in 2016. I was a Republican my whole life, and his presidency alone was enough for me to be like, "Yep, GG's. That was it. Nope, can't have that again. That's not good. That is the bad choice. I did it, and I accept that, but that was a bad choice." 2020, I went Green Party because I'm like, I don't know about these Democrats yet. I'm still a recovering Republican. I'm gonna go third party, but then. The only choice we really have to win is Kamala Harris. Her message was fine. After further review, the strategy needs to improve. And what we're seeing from Democrats right now is like, fuck, what the fuck is happening? Shout out to Al Green. But besides that, I'm like, oh no, this is really bad. Like, they're not actually fighting right now. This is not good.
This isn't obviously what the point of this podcast episode is about, but my God, so Al Green, you got one representative from Texas of all fucking places. Like, where are the safe space representatives who never have to worry about losing their seat, throwing a fucking fit?
Literally.
They had three things they could have done there. They could have just not showed up at all, which is what I kind of wish they would have done. Or they could have showed up, and every single one of them could have done what Al Green did until they managed to personally escort out all 250. or
Yes.
they booed him off stage and decided to scrap the whole thing, or they could have walked out after Al
Hmm.
Green. Like when Al Green got escorted out, they could have followed him
All
out,
of them.
given him the bird as they went out. They could have
Right.
done
Something.
any one of those things, and I would have fucking hollered. I would have been
Yeah.
like, "All right, they're back. They're in the fight. They're ready to go."
We're
Morale would have went
back.
up. But no, then it's like, okay, now we'll sit down and shut up like we're supposed to do, and let him just
Hold
ramble on about
signs.
transgender fucking mice for 2 goddamn hours.
Yeah.
And I just
Well,
like
right,
I
it's
don't
crazy
understand. Like
because
there's
it's crazy because is he a threat? Do they think he's a threat to democracy or not? Like
True.
right.
Al Green stood up and made it clear that he thought he was,
Yeah.
and y'all campaigned for 4 years on him being a threat to democracy, and here you are. You can thwart his ability to thwart democracy in a potentially meaningful way because all he did on stage was spew disinformation and misinformation. So you could stop him. I love the idea of after they take him out and everybody's settled, next person stands up and then just keep doing that until they kick everybody out or they just give up, right? Like
Yeah.
do something, and the whole thing is performative. Obviously, everybody knows
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to change anything in that chamber on that day, but you're setting the pace and you're setting the tone of what you can do by doing something other than sitting there and like not clapping or like randomly booing. Like that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Well,
That's what I told.
and
Go
well,
ahead.
sorry, just Republicans have gotten us here with performative
Right.
action. Like they
Right.
have crafted the entire narrative of everything that is the current situation in Washington through performative action. Like, and it's just we're going to do performative until it becomes reality, and we are going to press the limits until people stop pressing back, and that's literally what they do. And it's like Democrats had the perfect opportunity where there was absolutely no repercussions. What are they going to do? Well, somebody in the comments here said that 10 Democrats voted along with Republicans to censure
Yeah.
Al Green.
Yeah, they did. Yep. So
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on that. I
No,
was
you're
just
good.
fucking.
Yeah. It's very frustrating because I don't know much about Democratic Party politics because I was Republican my whole life, a Trump supporter, and then these last 5 years I've just been kind of like re-examining all of it, and then I'm like, okay, well, right now monetarily the Democrats are the only chance we have to win because of the funding and whatnot, and that's what I care about winning at this point. Like winning is what matters,
Mm-hmm.
and then when the party wins, then you primary the fuck out of people if they're not doing what they have to do. But if they don't win, then you have no shot. Right, so it's like it's a sucky strategy. It's still I'm still trying to fine tune it because then when they do shit like this, it's hard to even like advocate for it, right? Or when they refuse to do it. And I said the same thing to my stream. Every 10 minutes they should have stood up and like protested Trump, like one after the other, or again not even show up like others. But it was just not good enough. No, whatsoever. But yeah, back to the original point about like misinformation and like criticizing Trump. You have TDS and all that. Yeah, it's you push back against the narratives about Trump with Ukraine or with anything really, but with Ukraine, you're called all types of things. You have all, and this is even from someone that used to support the man, right? You're called everything under the sun, just to move the goalposts away from the facts that you're trying to present or trying to argue, and then make it more of like, well, you have a mental problem just because you don't like. Oh, you're just saying this because you don't like Trump. That's it. Like you don't actually have any valid points. You just don't like Trump. It's like that's the reality we're living in now when it comes to pushing back on misinformation or like lies.
And so, what is your take? Obviously, as somebody who's come all the way around to voting for Trump, to being vehemently against anything he says because whatever he says, everything he says is trash.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you say? Because we've been having sort of this discussion about Trump voters who are now sort of potentially seeing that like the back and forth on tariffs and or tariffs in general are a really not great strategy to win some sort of economic battle that's not really something they can define or like figure out how it's going to help them whatsoever. And they're
Mm-hmm.
seeing, the stock market take huge dips and just be highly volatile. And like today, I think it came out like the unpredictability index of just like the economy is like all-time high since they've started like doing things. And so what would you say to like Trump voters who are now potentially seeing that, and like how would you feel about them wanting to support anything against Trump? Like how do you feel about those type of people who are now kind of turning the page?
And to add
They
on to
have to.
that,
Go ahead. But
To add on to that question, somebody in the comments asked, "How did you figure out for yourself that Trump was crap? What is it that made you question what you were hearing?" So just kind of, I think those 2 points I think would go really well together in your answer there.
yeah, first of all, facts don't care about your feelings, right? That's what I was taught as a Trump supporter, voter, YouTube watcher of right wing politics. I was taught that, so I still hold that. I still hold that one from 2015 times 16.
Right. Ben Shapiro,
So,
OG.
yeah, yep, taught me that. Still holding to it.
Right.
And that is the problem, is now Republicans are operating off feelings and not facts, like zero facts, not even trying. Like, and I cover it every single day, right? I'm researching it all day. I'm on stream for 4 or 5 hours a day, reading everything, looking at everything. And and I understand that not everybody's going to be able to do that, but you got to really you open your mind. But also too, I think that the Democratic Party should not really focus on trying to court Republican voters, and focus more on their politics and the people that will vote for them, actually. And with Trump's own actions, a lot of MAGA or Trump supporters will fall off eventually. And if they see a solid, strong message and a populism around the Democratic Party or something inspiring, they'll fucking walk right over to it. Okay, so I'll be over here now. Fuck you. They'll do it. Literally, it's like they'll abandon all of their Trump shit because now they're a part of a new populism. Because a lot of people vote what's popular. True. So if the Democratic Party can really just stay in their lane and do things and not try to court MAGA voters for everything, or really they cut the Medicare. You guys still support him? And then their right-wing media, because they watch 18 different podcasts and news, are all telling them how good it actually is, and then the one person's telling them that they're wrong. It's they're just gonna fall back into their propaganda safe space and stay in there a little bit longer. So if they see that there's, go ahead.
No, you can finish what you're saying. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say if the Democrats can really just find a good, solid person and a platform to just go and full send on, Obama was so good at it, right? Or others, I'm really liking Jasmine Crockett. I'm really liking AOC's doing great. Governor Tim Walz, Tim Walz is doing great.
Baby.
He's putting bangers out there. He's putting bangers out there. There's some good ones, but they need to be out there now. Don't platform people that you've never heard of before. I don't want to hear AI generated speeches, right? The Republican Party is bad. Okay, we know, bro. But give us something more. But also, what changed me over to not be a Trump supporter anymore was actually it has to do with information and truth telling, because I was out there covering the riots and the protests in 2020, and I got invited on so many right wing stuff because I sounded right wing when I was talking, I guess, when I was talking about, because I was number one, I was trying to find a way to cope through all the shit I was seeing. So I was just comparing it all to Warzone and Call of Duty. I'm look at all the cops rallying on the rooftop of the police station. I was trying to I was being stupid, really. But I didn't know what to do. Buildings were on fire and things. So I was just riffing. But it was really I would see something happen and I would stream it, and I'm live and I'm covering it. And then right-wing media and my people that I knew that were right-wing, diehard Trump supporters would say I'm lying. I'm what do you mean? There's nothing to lie. I'm not telling you anything. I'm showing you. I'm streaming. I'm live, and the thing is happening in front of you. I'm not telling you what's happening. I'm showing you. And I would get called George Soros paid actor. All of the narratives of everything that I used to believe in when I was a Trump supporter.
Still waiting on that damn George Soros check too that I've been promised for all these years.
Yes, all of this. I was it all came crashing down for me pretty quickly, because I'm I'm now the thing that I used to say that other people are, I guess. What else are they lying about? Because I'm in information now, or I'm in news, and I got to report things to people. So I was they're lying about what I'm literally seeing with my own eyes here and telling you that it's happening. But then it got worse when Russia invaded Ukraine, and then Republicans sided with Russia this whole time. There would be one or two. There would be, honestly, there'd be onesie or twosie Republicans that were saying the right things and are trying to channel Reagan era Republican Russia bad messaging, but it never really worked. The populism of MAGA has always been anti-Ukraine, pro-Russian, straight up just regurgitating Russian messages. And that was enough for me to be okay, this not only is Trump the enemy because of January 6th and raiding the Capitol and trying to overturn the duly elected Joe Biden, but then you have them regurgitating Russian propaganda, and not even pushing back. I see the Republican Party as like anti-American completely. I see the Republican Party as like the enemy of the United States at this point, as an institution, as a system, as a political party. The Republican Party is anti-American. Like I don't see anything in there where I could even have like a bipartisan like take on it. Like, oh well, at least they're doing this, or like, you know, hey, like they're all bad. No, there's nothing. There's no good faith at all that I can provide for the Republican Party, because they're not showing it. They're not doing anything that's good.
Well, and it's a huge red flag immediately when all of the governments that Trump favors and says like, "Oh, you're doing a good job," are all authoritarian governments, and all governments that have been criticized on the world stage as being militaristic and authoritarian. Like, that's not America, and it never should ever become that way. And like, it doesn't make sense that you can see that he's talking about some of these people, and just like you said, it's feelings over facts. Like, they're just not listening to what's actually being said about those governments and their actions, and just completely being like, "Yep, Donald Trump's right. I don't care what anybody else says. I'm not going to look into it at
during
all."
his State of the Union too, didn't he throw South Korea under the bus?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. If he'll attack our allies and praise our enemies, like actual enemies. Oh, like he can say the most vitriolic lies about Zelensky or Democrats who are Americans. Like, hey, Republicans, guess what? Democrats are Americans. But then when it comes to criticizing Putin or Xi or any, like, hey, you know, don't want to mess up the deal or like be mean, or but like he can say the craziest things about people like that aren't even true. Right, that aren't even true at all. But when it comes to Putin, it's like, I gotta watch my words. Gotta be careful here. Don't want to mess up my future husband.
Right.
Well, and so that's just nuts. And what I was gonna say earlier, in your when you're going off about the Democratic Party, there was that they need to stop courting Republicans, and we could not agree more. Pandering to the right, or the right, which is center left or center right at this point. Pandering to the center is now center right, is now just like Reagan right, basically, at this point in modern times.
They're not good.
And just abandoning the youth vote and the progressive vote and all of the people who would be on their side.
Literally,
it wouldn't take much for them to court them, and instead, and it's not even like they abandon them, they actively sabotage them. We saw it with the Bernie primaries. But then just during the Kamala campaign and the obsession with chasing, like just punting the Overton window to the right on immigration, like I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you are never going to out hate Mexicans with Republicans. Like, they've got that down, okay? Like, they hate Mexicans, they want to build a wall, they want to deport them all. You're not going to outdo that. And anybody who wants that has already found the people they're going to vote for. Like, so go the opposite. Be like, oh yeah, they're calling us for open borders. We don't have open borders now, but we fucking want open borders. Fucking go that direction with it. Go, like, give some different policy,
or at least come at it from like a Denmark sort of perspective, where like they're definitely a social democratic country and they're very left leaning, and they have the actual social safety nets that we want in America, and they have limited their immigration in Europe much more than like Germany has over the last like 5 years. But they base their immigration policies off of sort of how much they feel like they can economically provide for, and in which it will not be disruptive to their economy. If the Democratic Party would have at least said like, hey, we believe the economy can sort of absorb certain X amount of immigrants, and this is what the policy that we want it to be, like, you could potentially defend that. That's a fact. These are what we believe to be the cases for the best economic situation that we can have. You don't need to go full open border in order to have a good immigration policy, because open border immigration is not necessarily always good for an economy. So like,
I mean, I was being a tad facetious, but
yeah, I know.
The point is that like they're going, closed borders, isolationism, and Democrats are like, oh, people seem to be responding to that because we've allowed the Republicans to create the entire narrative around every single fucking issue ever. And it's like, these are the things that people are caring about because we've allowed Republicans to make them care about these make-believe issues. Like, the issues that they're bringing up do not exist. Like,
Exactly.
there is no wave of immigration. We are not being overrun by brown people. Like, we have less immigrants, less undocumented immigrants in the country today, or even before, Trump came in and started sending them all to Guantanamo or whatever the fuck he's doing. But under the Biden's open border administration, we had less undocumented immigrants then than we did under George W. Bush. Like, total numbers, and we've got more people today.
If anything, I found too. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, bring it back to like the center right Republicans and like how not to court them, or like if your message is good enough, they will, but maybe not. But I found this too with supporting Ukraine, right? Because the Republican Party as a whole has not been supportive of Ukraine in terms of the populism. And, as someone that was willing to do whatever I had to do to vote for who I had to support Ukraine, but also the United States, which just happened to align with Democratic Party because the Republican Party is so cooked right now, beyond cooked. We have people in the Ukraine space that are obviously Republican. It's a very conservative country. That's what I've learned. Like it's like, what you think is like traditional conservative, like small government, and people are out there like in villages and like just conservative, but nothing crazy or like nothing extreme that we see in America. So that's why I think a lot of like Republicans and conservatives latched on to what's happening in Ukraine, but they were so like they did nothing but filter MAGA, right? They're basically like Trump and MAGA would say just pro-Russian shit, and then these like center-right Republicans, these Reagan-era Republicans, as they call themselves, will be like, well, he's not actually saying this, he's actually saying this, and like, you should still, like, the Republicans aren't so bad. Or to the point where you actually have people that were like outwardly like, I'm a Republican, and that's what I am. I might not vote this time, I just no way I can do it. I'm like, bro, like, you're gonna hold like, so you're party over the country or party over like what things you care about? Like, I don't give a shit about that anymore. It doesn't matter, because that's not what, like, holding on to a party is not your politics. That means you're being cucked to a political party completely.
Well, and it's even beyond that for Trump, because he's no longer, and we've talked about how he throws our allies under the bus, and obviously we need to stand by Ukraine, not only because they support democratic values, but also because we've literally signed treaties in which we have promised to defend them. But Trump no longer cares, and I don't think he's ever cared, but he is willing to give up the entire world order that the United States has created over the last 80 years since World War II, in which we care about economic open border trade or open trade and creating economic stability, in favor of any government that is willing to lick his boot and suck his dick until he comes to completion, because that's all he cares about. He cares about himself. He cares about who's gonna say he's the best, and our allies be damned. The NATO tradition that's basically kept a better world peace than any other treaty or organization in modern history, willing to throw that all down the drain just because he wants more people to think that he's the best president that's ever existed.
Yeah, it's
All right, and then thank you so much for being here with us today. We are going to pick this up again next week, because it's just too much important information to keep talking or to cut short, and we want to keep talking about it. So we are going to split this up into 2 episodes. Thank you so much for being here, Andrew. Once again, if you want to remind everybody where they can find you, we appreciate that.
Yes, you guys can find me on Marcado Media on YouTube, Facebook, X, and Twitch. I'm live every day except for Sundays, just trying to provide hard-hitting journalism on the ground and tell the truth.
That's right. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and thank you, Andrew, for coming back on the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
We appreciate you being here, and we will see you next week.
Peace.